everybody, you're listening to the Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. This is the weekly radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We head over to the Rhylight Zone for a short story and or some poetry. We catch up with Twangling Jack Ford in the Oak Shed for a weekly album review. We have a different guest on each week and we play local, unsigned and or independent music. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for the Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. You can also email me here at the studio on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. And I'm always keen to hear from poets, performers, musicians, anybody involved in the local arts scene, anybody with arts news, a story to share, etc. Don't hesitate even to get in touch. And we're repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights or on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts.
Chapter 25. Nate's death wasn't mentioned again, and John and Peter didn't bother to hire a replacement. But it was the calm before the storm. We formally announced the IPO on a Tuesday, and the press of the world went mental. Flick organised a music festival in Menlo Park. She'd been working on it for months and decided to repurpose it for the IPO. So we all boarded a bus in the morning to get down there before the show started. It was a masterstroke for many reasons. John and Peter loved it because it kept the press away from the office, which made security easier. They could hire a third-party firm instead of relying on Niels and his men and panicking the day before to make sure that everything was locked away. In fact, it was so well planned that our confidence was high, and we were sure that nothing could go wrong. Famous last words. The day of the festival was warm and sunny with barely a cloud in the sky. We started drinking early as soon as we got on the bus. I was pretty drunk by the time that I arrived, and I was in no mood to hobnob with journalists. Luckily I'd been chatting to Peter, and he felt the same as I did. I hate these things, he told me. John's always been better at them than I am. For me, it's all about the product. If we build it, they will come. That's why John's doing all of the talking today. I'm just here for the booze and the bands. I couldn't agree more, I replied. Deep down, all I could think about was what Abby would have made of the show, or what Kerry would have thought. Abby would have loved it. Kerry would have hated it. They would have argued about it all day. I'm telling you, Dan, he said, helping himself to another can of bud from the stash beneath the seats. Life is just a game, and it's one I plan to win. When the bus arrived at the festival site, Peter and I split from the rest of the group and made our way to the bar. The rest of the team was going backstage to hang out with the musicians and the tech elite. Not us. We weren't in the mood. And so that was how Peter and I ended up sitting on camping chairs towards the back of the site, sharing a joint and sipping beer from plastic cups. I hadn't heard of most of the performers, but that was hardly the point. Flick had worked on the lineup, and she'd mined the data from our users to figure out what they wanted to hear. We were expecting 20,000 people, but they were only there to show how powerful we'd become. The whole show was designed to cater to the journalists who'd been flown in at Formerly's expense. John and Flick took to the stage in the early evening to give a demo of the product on the main stage. By that point, Peter and I were so stoned that we'd stopped drinking, and we were expecting the demo to go down badly with the general public. But people loved it. Several thousand up revelers swallowed each of John's words like it was the second coming of Christ. Then, Flick and John left the stage, and I fetched some tacos while some singer-songwriter played bubblegum pop as the sun died down. I couldn't stand her, but the crowd loved her. I sat with my back to her as she finished her set. I was just thinking about heading back to the compound when something unusual happened. John was wheeled onto the stage in a coffin. It turned out to be part of the plan. John was due to deliver his keynote from the comfort of his padded wooden box. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, as the big screens at the front of the stage flickered into life. "We've gathered you here for a reason. Well, here it is, folks. You wanted an announcement, and you've got one. Formerly is heading to the New York Stock Exchange." The crowd responded to the announcement with a cheer, but they were at a festival. They would have cheered anything. "Formerly is growing from strength to strength," John continued. "Even as I speak, new users are signing up to the site in record numbers. In some regions, we're in the top 2 or 3 social networks. In others, we're not far behind. Our most recent stats show 270 million users. That's 270 million people who've recognised their own mortality." He shifted a little in the coffin and adjusted his tie, which was lying limply across the left half of his stomach. The camera angle made it look like he was standing up. I guessed, correctly, that the video was being simulcast on the web and that the eyes of the world were upon us. "We're growing fast," John continued, "and we're profitable, consistently so. We're even running smoothly in China, where even Google doesn't dare to follow us. Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived." Another scattering of applause. John waited for it to die down before he continued. "Now that we're all grown up, we want to play with the big boys," he said. "That's why we're going public. We already answered to our users with the changes we made to the site. What difference does it make to us if our users become our shareholders? From the wings, 4 men in black suits, 4 men I'd never seen before in my life, stepped forward and walked over to the coffin. As one, they lifted it up onto their shoulders. And now, friends, John said, smiling, it's time to enjoy our headline act. Love life while you've got it. The lights went out and 3 balls of fire spurted up into the air from the pyros. In the darkness, an orchestra was warming up. They played a funeral dirge while John was carried off stage. Have you seen this? Flick scowled, slamming a newspaper down in front of me. I grunted and took a look at the article. It was a piece in the New York Times about the IPO. I have now, I said. So what? So what? Look at it! She grabbed the paper, held it up in front of her face and started to read it. CEO of tech startup dies on stage, she began. That's just the headline, Dan. It says, John Myers, CEO of Palo Alto's formerly, announced today that the company will be publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. The announcement took place at a music festival in Menlo Park, which was organised by the company. So? I haven't finished, she said. Let me find it. She murmured to herself and skimmed her finger over the article, looking for her place. Ah, yes, here it is. Meanwhile, the online backlash has already begun, with some users calling for a boycott of the site, claiming that Myers showed disrespect to users by appearing in a coffin during the announcement. I still don't get it, I said. Is that a bad thing? I thought you said there was no such thing as bad publicity. This is different, Flick replied. Formally is different. It's about to become a publicly traded company. It's become bigger than us. Now, if one of us brings the company into disrepute... Disrepute? Whatever the hell you want to call it then, she growled. Either way, we're not playing around anymore. I laughed and she looked at me. Listen, Dan, she whispered. Whatever deal we had, forget about it. The only thing I care about is taking us public so I can dump my shares and get out of here. Then she walked away, leaving me there to think about Nate and the message he'd tried and failed to leave me.
You're listening to the Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is Spliz with Loving You featuring Georgia Michelle.
Open the door. There's a look in your eye. Hide in a conversation. Hiding goodbye. And those words took my heart to break. When I figured out that you could walk away. But I learned after all the pain I've been saved. 'Cause I lost myself in loving you. I lost myself
still choking, I'm still broken, rubbing salt into the wound. I'm still reeling, don't know what I'm feeling, rubbing salt into the wound. You left these scars, then that's my heart. It's not your fault. We're rubbing salt into the wounds, that's all we do. When that lonely bed ejects me to the world, I realize the operating table's turned. You cauterize, you theorize, you cut me down so deep. Just wish I could sleep forever. Sleep, 'cause you're mine, I eat you. You rub the salt into my chagrin. It's not a sin to hide your pride. Stops you seeing straight. You berate, chastise me on the pride. See me, I'm on my knees kneeling and I'm feeling that's gotta be appealing and pleasing. Yeah, you say as you flame me for blame. Say on your Facebook page, everything's okay. Everything's okay. It's rubbing salt into the wounds, that's all we do. Become attuned, I'm rubbing salt into the wound. But you seems like you bloom, 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 like you bloomed, like you bloom, like you bloom, like you bloomed. It's rubbing salt into the wounds, that's all we do. That's all we do. It's rubbing salt into the wound. That's all we do.
That was Salt in the Wound by Mika England, and before that we had Loving You by Spliz featuring Georgia Michelle. You're listening to The Arch on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain, and we're joined now in conversation by this week's guest, who is Lizzie Pawsey.
Well, okay, so I want to ask you, obviously the main thing to chat about is about music. And I wondered if you could let me know how long you've been making music and how you got your start.
I want to say that I've been making music since I think it's probably coming from lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
I've properly started writing then. But currently, because I've got a new EP coming out soon, it's a lot more upbeat versus my old EP,
Yeah.
which for some reason, I don't know why, it's very depressing. Don't know how on earth it became depressing. It just became depressing. No, I also had singing lessons during lockdown.
Okay.
Only recently met my singing teacher after lockdown, when my mum then commented when we saw her and said, "Geez, she's tiny."
So are those all like via Zoom?
Yeah, I did all my lessons during COVID just via Zoom, and even coming out of COVID, I still do them by Zoom.
Yeah.
Mainly because she lives in Winchester, whereas I live in Weymouth, so it's like a long journey. Adding on the fact that I'm in college,
Yeah.
it's very hard to like try and schedule trying to go up there and actually do an in-person lesson.
Cool. And you mentioned sort of your EPs. So can you tell us a bit about the one that you've got coming out?
Yeah, so the EP coming out, we haven't actually got a name for it yet. I almost want to sort of say this is EP2 because I just don't know what it's going to be. But my single "Fall of My Heart" has come out on Spotify, and the video is out on YouTube. And it's strange because like half of it's sort of still a bit like a ballad sort of song, whereas the other half of it is really like upbeat. So it sort of gives you like the best of both worlds. You can have like a really like solemn type of song, or you can have a really like upbeat, go to like a party or drive somewhere song.
Yeah, cool. Well, and I suppose that like reflects life as well, in that you know you have those slower moments and you have those more upbeat ones. And like especially with you saying you getting started with your music or getting started seriously with it sort of during lockdown, it's a bit of a, I don't know, a few people, I chatted to somebody yesterday and he was saying he'd had loads of time during COVID to write songs, but there was nothing really to write about because it was like all of life was on hold. So that, you know, it wasn't as though he was having new experiences that he could write about or meeting new people or anything like that.
No, that was exactly how my first EP went, because I had just no idea what I wanted to write about, because obviously we were trapped inside. So it's like, okay, what do I write about? Whereas like nowadays, I'm writing a new song. I'm writing 2 new songs probably per day.
Awesome. Just
like from random words even. But I think it's just more of the fact once you have something that sort of like clicks your creative writing, you sort of have that mindset afterwards. Yeah. It's just finding that word that sort of clicks it.
Yeah, for sure. And how do you like approach songwriting? What does it look like for you when you sit down to write a song?
I mean, it really depends. Like sometimes I might like for example, my mum told me this like one line and I ended up staying up the entire night trying to finish it. Yeah. Because I knew exactly what the song was about just from that one line. Whereas there's other times where I've had a song, I've had a chorus, and I've left it for months before coming back to it because I had an idea to finish it. But yeah, it really just depends on the type of song I'm writing about. And it's very strange because it's not even something simple. Like, for example, I wrote like an entire chorus waiting for a train, which is a very strange place to like suddenly have an idea of, oh, I want to do this.
Well, sometimes as well, you've got to kind of capture those moments as well. I mean, that's why a lot of people kind of carry notebooks around or jot notes on their phone or whatever, because that's when you get the idea. And if you don't write it down straight away, you kind of lose it, you know? Cool. And I think I read online somewhere, you've had some of your music on BBC Introducing, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about, you know, well, what track they played and what that experience was like for you?
They played, I think they played all my singles, didn't they?
Yes.
From my first EP, they played all the singles, which was really cool. They've also played Fall of My Heart. I have to check with Mum because the chances of me remembering is like...
Mum's hiding around the corner.
Yeah.
But no, it was really cool though when I found out the first time that one of my songs was put on BBC Introducing, because I always wanted to have a song on there.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Awesome. And so mentioning your mum, is your mum like your manager or does she just remember things for you?
I would like to say my mum's like my manager. She's also a lawyer, so she's
Nice.
very useful in the sense of like making sure that I'm getting the best treatment for
Yeah.
things, making sure I'm not losing out on something, which is cool.
Awesome, cool. And so the tracks that you met that got played on BBC Introducing, were those from the Dark Clouds EP?
Yeah, they were.
Cool. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, and like, how did you record the tracks that went on that?
We went up to London. I think we spent like the week up there, and it was really crazy because the entire week we were up there, half of the week we were writing the songs, and then the other half we were recording them, like properly just getting them down. And it was like, it was a very, very, very like
Intense.
Yeah, very intense.
Were you ever tempted to like change any of the like the lyrics and stuff last minute? Because it sounds like, again, it's almost as though the songs aren't finalized until you get them, until you go into the studio and actually record them.
So like for these songs, there were a lot of like word changes because we were trying to figure out, okay, what words really go well to each other, what complement each other. And actually it's thanks to like being able to do that with my producer Darren Martin. I feel like my songwriting skills nowadays have actually grown because I've learned a lot from him in terms of like how I'm writing or even just how I'm producing things. Because when we first recorded the EP, I had no idea how I wanted it to be. Because obviously, like we said, we came out of COVID, I just had no ideas on what I wanted to write. But I think when they were created, I think it was definitely a really nice experience hearing it from before versus the after effect.
You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with this week's guest, who is Lizzie Pawsey. And this is Lizzie Pawsey with Fool of My Heart.
Walked in so confidently, ready to win. Got my eyes locked on you the second you walked in. Had rumors about your life, breaking hearts both left and right. But boy, don't you know that karma ain't nice. I'm all in, ain't here to play games, but it will take two of us to make it. So tell me honestly, you won't lie in front of me when you say you love me. Stand by every word. Tell me honestly, think about your one and only. Know you're playing with fire. Don't make a fool of my heart. Don't make a fool of my heart. Don't make a fool of my heart. Don't make a fool. Don't make a fool. Don't make a fool of my heart. Riding me out on a date to woo my heart. But little did you know I knew the game from the start. Boy, I ain't easy to win. I know this little game you play. Breaking love within the dark over and over again. I'm all in, ain't here to play games, but it will take two of us to make it. So tell me honestly, you won't lie in front of me when you say you love me. Stand by every word. Tell me honestly, think about your one and only. Know you're playing with fire. Don't make a fool of my heart. Don't make a fool of my heart. Don't make a fool of my heart. Don't make a fool. Don't make a fool. Don't make a fool. Tick-tock, time is running out. Will you speak the truth or do I call you out? Tick-tock, time is running. Time is running. Time is running. Tick-tock, time is running out. Will you speak the truth or do I call you out? Tick-tock, time is running. Time is running. Time is running. So tell me honestly, you won't lie in front of me when you say you love me. Stand by every word. Tell me honestly,
That was Fool of My Heart by Lizzie Pawsey. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to be rejoined now by Lizzie Pawsey.
And what about like the second EP that you're working on, the one we're calling EP number 2?
Yeah.
How did you record that at the same place, or was it a different approach for that?
We recorded it at the same place, but I think we didn't do like the full week of like intense writing and like producing, because most of the songs by then I had written.
Yeah.
Even though I think some of them were like starting ideas, and then some of them were like finished products that obviously needed a bit of like word changes. But it was very cool, because I think from then on, I learned a lot about, okay, so these words were okay. There were just a few things I needed to change. And the nice thing was, though, by then I started having ideas of how I wanted the song to go.
Yeah.
And obviously leading up to this point now, I've got like about like 12 or 13 tracks on my phone, just like loads of lyrics. And I know exactly how I want it to go. I know exactly what instruments I want in it.
Yeah.
And I know how I sort of want it to be laid out. Which is crazy, because I think a couple of years back, I don't think I would have believed I was able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I guess, does that take some of the pressure off you when it does come time to record? Because you, I suppose, have more of like a fixed idea of what the end goal is going to look like.
It takes a lot of pressure off, because knowing what I want from it, it makes it easier for me to like communicate my opinions on stuff, and being able to say, actually, no, don't change it, keep it this way, and just trust me on it.
Yeah.
Instead of just being like, okay, we'll go with what you say, because I used to just do that. I didn't actually try to express, okay, maybe it would sound better this way.
Yeah. I guess like on that, because you mentioned that kind of that finding inspiration, do you find a lot of inspiration from seeing what other musicians are doing?
Oh, definitely. A lot of my music, I feel, is persuaded a lot by what I listen to. Because sometimes I'll hear something and I'll think, oh, I really like this, like the way they sing it, and think, okay, how could I incorporate something in my own style that could be something that's just as unique as this?
Yeah.
And I always love listening to different music, because it just sort of gives me like a new idea of what I could really create. Yeah. And obviously I'm exploring different like genres, because since I'm still young, I want to be able to experience different things, see what works for me, see what doesn't. So that way then at least I can say I did actually try stuff, instead of just stuck to like one genre and that was it.
Well, that's it. And I suppose, again, it's almost, there's like value in finding stuff that you don't like, because at least you know, okay, well, this is what I don't want to sound like. And so I wanted to ask you about instruments. Do you play any instruments, or do you just do vocals?
I'm attempting to learn the piano and the guitar. I've always loved piano, because we have like this piano in our living room.
Yeah.
And I've always loved playing on it, even though I've always like struggled trying to like properly play it. I've always just like played chords on it whenever I've had like an idea pop in my head. But the same with like my songwriting. The more I continue it, the more it evolves, the more I feel like my playing of the piano evolves. But I'm trying to reach a point where I'll be able to like play and sing at the same time.
Yeah.
Because I've always wanted to just do that. Because although it's nice to sing with like backing tracks and stuff, I just want to be able to do something that is other than a backing track in some way.
Yeah. And well, one of my questions I wanted to ask would be, if you could learn any new instrument that you can't play, what would it be? So you've kind of mentioned guitar and piano. So if you pick one that isn't a guitar and a piano.
If I could ever play something, I think I'd want to learn the bass.
Yeah.
I vaguely played it for my college group.
Yeah.
When we were doing a song, and I just really liked the idea of just being able to play those notes, and it was just so simple, but it had such an effect on how the song played, because without it, it just sounded so empty.
Yeah.
And it was so crazy, because it was like, oh, you know what, I really like holding this and, you know, being able to play it.
Cool. Well, yeah, it's like bass and drums are like the rhythm section that kind of, they're the glue that holds the band together. But it's also, when you see people dancing and foot tapping and stuff, it's because of the bass and the drums, rather than the show-off lead guitarist doing a solo or whatever it is. Awesome. And do you perform live, or do you just record?
Oh, I perform live, yeah.
Awesome. So do you have a preference out of the two? Do you prefer live? Do you prefer recording?
I mean, in some senses, I like both of them, but I think I do enjoy live performance because I feel like that's when when I'm at my peak of being able to shine through without having like all those like extra works on the vocals through the recording session, and they can just hear plain old vocals without like anything trying to like make sure it's all correct or something. It's just plain ready sort of thing.
Cool.
Sometimes I enjoy just singing live about the recording because it's a nice change.
Yeah, cool. And what are like some of the places that you've sort of performed at?
I've performed in London. I've performed in Bournemouth, Worcester, Bristol.
And we're going to Toronto next year.
Oh wow!
In Canada.
So that's like your world tour.
It's my first. It will be my first proper time going somewhere other than Turkey or Tenerife. Because I've only been to like proper like 2 countries.
Yeah.
Oh, this is actually singing as well.
This is also singing, so it's cool. Because I've always wanted to go to Toronto, so that's cool.
Awesome. Cool. And I wanted to just kind of wrapping things up really. One of the questions I wanted to ask, because as you say, you're still young. So do you have like a grand plan of where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years time with your music?
I want to be able to perform in a lot of like bigger venues, a lot of bigger festivals. That's definitely on the table for me. I'd love to do that. I think that's the main thing I really want to do. I just want to be able to perform to my heart's content, and that's what will really just like make me feel really happy to do.
Cool. And who would you say are some of your biggest influences as a vocalist?
Taylor Swift's a big one for me. I like her singing style and the way she expresses things. Adele is really a big influence in a lot of my music. And I've got to say probably Ariana, just because I really love like her ad libs. In some ways, I always like incorporating 3 of those like singers and just thinking, okay, what would they like listening to their songs? I might like a certain idea from that. It's like, okay, how can I incorporate that in my own style? And I love their music.
Awesome. Cool. And so a bigger question, we've kind of covered your like grand plan, but what have you got coming, say, in 2023? And also where can people go to follow you to stay up to date?
They can follow me Instagram at Lizzie Sings _ official. And they can find me on Spotify. I think the best way to search me up is doing like Lizzie Walk Away or Lizzie Dark Clouds.
Yeah. I guess you've got album number 2 is in the works, so that'll probably be next year.
Yeah. So album number 2 is coming out. And then obviously whenever these songs end up being released, who knows?
Yeah. Hopefully they'll be on BBC Introducing again.
Oh, fingers crossed.
Big thank you to Lizzie Pawsey for joining me. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is Paul Adams with 47.
Woke up on my birthday with a hangover from hell. Never touched a drop last night, but I'm not doing well. Can't believe I'm 47 and I've been through hell. Man, it feels good to be alive. I went for a midday walk, cause I just don't own a car. Been down in that Aylesbury weather, well, I didn't have to get that far before I heard a clap of thunder and I saw a flash of light. But man, it feels good to be alive. Let the rain fall down on me. You won't hear me complaining, begging, Lord, set me free. Let the rain fall down on me. 'Cause man, it feels good to be alive. I under a nearby tree and I looked up at the sky. I thought about those other years and those friends who've passed me by. I held on to the good times, said goodbye to the bad. But man, it feels good to be alive. Let the rain fall down on me. You won't hear me complaining, begging Lord to set me free. Let the rain fall down on me. 'Cause man, it feels good to be alive. I've been spending far too long dancing to someone else's song. I've gotta start to do the thing that's right. And even though I'm soaking through, there's not a thing that I can't do. The rest of my life is mine. Let the rain fall down on me. You won't hear me complaining, begging Lord set me free. Let the rain fall down on me. 'Cause man, it feels good to be alive. Let the rain fall down on me. 'Cause man, it feels good to be alive.
How often do you hear a pedalo brave in the deep dark sea? How often do you hear a pedalo brave in the deep dark sea? Well, that's as common to find as a woman that doesn't pine over me. Well, be soft and harmless, it makes for the perfect disguise. Well, be soft and harmless, it makes for the perfect disguise. What I'm seen as no competition in their husband's eyes. I've got a way, kind of way that puts out the woman's shade. I've got a way, kind of way that puts out the woman's shade. I'm no handyman, darling, where they may be sleeping with their men, but it's me running round their head. But you can't say I'm through, all the power's out of my steer. Oh, you can't say I'm through, all the power is out of my steer. And the order I'm purveying is one that men should live to fear. But I say time and time again, darling, stay with the man you've got. But I say time and time again, darling, stay with the man you've got. But it's I want a big nose Thomas time on my man, he is not.
That was Pedal Blues by Big Nose Thomas, and before that we had 47 by Paul Adams. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to head over to the Oak Shed now for our weekly album review, courtesy of Twangling Jack Ford.
The Smashing Pumpkins, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. When this album came out, I was still in my 30s, but I felt that this music, though being made by 20-year-olds, was not for me. Like the grunge and alt-rock of the time, I did not even attempt to try to like it. But when Britpop and Radiohead restored my interest in guitar music, I took a copy out of the library to see what all the fuss was about. The only thing that I did not like was the song Tonight Tonight, which seemed to be trying too hard to get me to like it. The word tonight in a chorus is one of the biggest cliches in popular music. I love what Bernstein and Sondheim did with it in 1957, but I would have hoped that Phil Collins had killed off the whole thing in the 80s. On top of the overuse of the word tonight, it has these lush strings that soften and smooth out any of the rough edges. It makes it all-round radio friendly. Over the years I have revisited this album a number of times. It has become a challenge. Each time I hear more I like, but each time I'm surprised at how much I have forgotten. It has taken a long time to get any kind of handle on this thing. It is 2 hours long. Often it seems to me that double albums are disproportionately harder to get into than 2 single albums. 2 listens would be enough to totally get a grasp of both Abbey Road and Let It Be. Yet I have listened to the Beatles' White Album more than any of the others and I'm still a bit overwhelmed by it. A single album is usually a snapshot of the sound of an artist at the time of recording, whereas a double album will often see them branching out, covering different genres and styles. Some double albums are just extended single albums like London Calling, Blonde on Blonde or Exile on Main Street, where they may have had too much material for 2 sides of vinyl but they fit on a single CD. I must say I've never really got into Pink Floyd's The Wall, though that may be because I don't like the song Another Brick in the Wall. And I have never totally got into Quadrophenia, though I love all the Who albums that came before it. It is probably because they had found their sound on Who's Next and were going to stick with it. I am not entirely sure what the general style of the Smashing Pumpkins is supposed to be, even after listening to their other albums. This album starts with a piano instrumental, but has heavy pounding riff-based songs, sweet poppy songs, songs that stick in your head if they're the last thing you hear, but fade from memory when you get halfway through the next one and that one worms its way into your ears. There are some quite complex ideas with interesting arrangements, but it is the simple repetitive songs that stick in the head. Sometimes the music takes twists and turns and might for a while look like a dearth of ideas, but you are never more than a verse or a solo away from an often infuriatingly catchy chorus. You pass through heavy riffs played with metal-style compressed guitar, acoustic balladry, baroque strings and harp glissandos, electronic trickery and solos that rise and swoop like birds of prey. The vocals are always high enough in the mix to be intelligible. Everything is produced to sound radio-friendly. You could definitely tire of Billy Corgan's heavily affected vocal style, but I don't mind the singing. Singing is not as important to me as musical content, and this album is jammed full of musical content. From the lightning fast to the shouted and screamed, to the languid and swampy, and the softly drawled and almost whispered. With so much variety spaced over 2 discs, it is quite frustrating that the only thing I will always take away is that despite all his rage, he is still just a rat in a cage. Smashing Pumpkins, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to Lizzie Pawsey for joining me. Thank you to A.B. Frank for his flash fiction. Thank you to all of the artists I've shared. As always, you can reach out to me here at the studio by dropping me a line on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. You can find us on Facebook if you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, and we're repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. So that's it for another week. I'm going to leave you with one last tune, and this is Charlie Brind with Always the One, featuring Alex Green. I'll see you next week.
cages. I know you have no regrets, and why should you? It's not your fault, 'cause I'm always the one to spoil all of the fun, and I'm always the one to raise my ugly head. But it's time for a change. I'm so fed up with the shame, and I've waited too long. Now I've got to move on. I've got to move on.
I remember him. Must be a decade by now. I regret that late November and that night we had that fight. I was angry and I just lashed out, 'cause I'm
Always the one
to spoil
all of the fun,
and I'm
always the one
to raise
my ugly head. And it's time for a change. I'm so fed up with the rage, and I've waited too long. So I've got to move on. Every time that I was sad, you were always there for me. Every time that I shut down, you would wait so patiently. Imagine how life's treating you, wondering what would you do if I called and said I'd
like to see
It drifts on and on and on.
drifts on and on and on.
It drifts on and on and on.
Drifts on and on and on.
I've got to move on.
We all feel the need to belong. We all want the freedom to choose. We should never be afraid to be wrong. 'Cause you win some and some you must lose. Everyone in this life must feel pain. We feel pleasure in sadness, we have fun. Everyone has to walk in the rain, though we aim one day to walk in the sun. It's the same. Sun shines on everyone. Everybody in the world wants to be happy and free. It's the same. Sun lights up all the skies. And if you open your eyes, maybe you'll see you have only one life, and it won't last forever. So never say never, 'cause we're all in this together. It's the same. Sun shines on everyone. Everybody in the world wants to be happy and free. It's the same. Sun shines on everyone. It's the same sun that shines on you and me. It's the same sun. It's the same sun. Oh yes, it's the same sun. Oh yes, it's the same sun. It's the same sun. It's the same sun. It's the same sun. Oh, it's the same sun. It's the same sun. It's the same sun. Oh, it's the same sunshine. So stop and look around you. Where are you coming from? Where are you going to? Stop and see that man beside you. Are you scared 'cause you think he's brighter than you? Are you scared 'cause he's darker or lighter than you? Shout it out loud, no need to whisper. We're all one family, brothers and sisters, the same. Sun shines on everyone. Everybody in the world wants to be happy and free. It's the same. Sun lights up all the skies. And if you open your eyes, maybe you'll see that it's the same. Sun shines on everyone. Everybody in the world wants to be happy and free. It's the same. Sun shines on everyone. It's the same sun that shines